Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Today I am pleased to rise to speak to Bill C-349, an act to amend the Criminal Code and to make consequential amendments to other acts, criminal organizations, and the important issue of combating organized crime. This bill seeks to establish a government-maintained registry of symbols associated with organized crime. Symbols on this list would be illegal to wear or prominently display. Should someone deliberately flaunt a symbol on this registry, they would face a penalty of up to 2 years in jail. And while this bill has good intentions, it contains many flaws. As it is written, there is no requirement to make this registry of symbols easily accessible to the public. It would be important for the public to have access to such a list. Otherwise, Canadians would not know whether they are in violation of the law. This is especially worrying since offenders or unintentional offenders could face jail time if they are wearing clothing sporting one of these outlawed logos. As this bill is about protecting public safety, this is a significant oversight. The broader concern is that when organizations are cited for offenses that lead to their logos being placed on this registry, their symbols, but not the organization itself, would be targeted and banned. A more fundamental problem is that this bill will not significantly impede or frustrate organized crime. Criminal organizations may use multiple symbols and insignias, or none at all. Different factions within the same criminal organizations may have their own symbols. And if the proposed registry were to include all of them, it would get quite long and perhaps even unwieldy for enforcement officers. Gang members can and will likely change their symbols to get around any formal bans, or simply stop wearing clothing with banned logos. They also may simply use identifiers not addressed in this bill, such as tattoos, in order to identify their allegiances. Madam Speaker, organizations, like gangs, have little trouble making their affiliations clear when they want to use their reputations for intimidation, as this bill is unlikely to appreciably hinder them. While gangs will weave easily enough around this legislation, others who are not implicated in organized crime may be unfairly caught up in it. The bill states that it would affect only those knowingly wearing the symbols it lists in order to establish membership in a criminal organization. Madam Speaker, I believe it would be difficult to either prove this for those that are guilty or to prove innocence for those who unwittingly made a mistake. Gang members could easily claim no affiliation to the symbol or that they wear the insignia for other purposes. Without knowledge of the individual's history, it would be difficult for police and other law enforcement to prove otherwise. It would also be valuable to clarify exemptions for forms of portrayal that are less objectionable. Even countries with difficult relationships to past symbols often allow for them to be used for historical or educational contexts. This bill should acknowledge their use in, for example, journalistic or dramatic works, which may indeed help shed light on organized crime and its detrimental effects on society. Madam Speaker, the previous Conservative government took concrete action to combat organized crime. We expanded the Criminal Code's definition of serious offenses to include prostitution, illegal gambling, and many drug-related crimes. The penalties for these offenses, which constitute major revenue streams for organized crime, were all increased. Police were given the tools they needed to go after gangs. Funding for RCMP drug enforcement was greatly increased, and the National Drug Strategy helped combat drug smuggling. Furthermore, funding to combat international drug smuggling in the Americas was increased because smuggling drugs and the crime that results from it does not stop at our border. Madam Speaker, these initiatives had a positive impact in the fight against organized crime. This bill, however, would be ineffective at fighting organized crime as it focuses on symbols rather than the crimes themselves. This bill also raises serious concerns about freedom of expression. which is a fundamental constitutional right. Section 2 of the Charter clearly sets out freedom of expression as protected, and as it is written, this bill would likely find difficulty surviving a constitutional challenge. It would be unlikely to pass a charter challenge under reasonable limitations since it targets symbols rather than the criminals themselves or the organizations which are actually responsible for the crimes. Finally, Madam Speaker, this bill does not account for how the meaning of symbols can differ and change considerably over time and in different places. The insignia adopted by a gang in one city may be a completely innocuous symbol anywhere else in the country. Many symbols often have wholly different connotations in different cultures or contexts. Criminal organizations, by their very nature, have little reason to follow copyright or respect symbols already in use by others. Madam Speaker, what would happen if a criminal organization attempts to appropriate the symbols of others, of other legitimate organizations? This is especially concerning since gangs often take ethnic or existing symbols as their insignias. This bill would have us ban these symbols regardless of their meanings in other contexts. In conclusion, Madam Speaker, as I've said earlier, this bill has many flaws. It would largely fail in its main objective of combating organized crime, and its provisions raise many deep concerns. Therefore, I will not be supporting this bill. Thank you, Madam Speaker.